What's up, everybody? Welcome back to some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson down in Texas at TPC Craig Ranch. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst at Occupy, Niromada. Niro, it's been 2 weeks off, and now we're back. Good to see you. I guess good to hear from you again. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, we haven't talked to the audience for a few weeks. And I don't know that this is the greatest event in America, although it is strangely a strong field at the very top. It gets pretty weak in the middle there. But yeah, any week on the PGA Tour is big contests on DraftKings. So let's get after it.
Absolutely. So what we'll do in this video, we'll talk about the top plays in our Occupy model for the Byron Nelson presented by the CJ Cup. Nero, I don't know, is that the college bowl name for this event? Is that the official name?
I mean, it basically is a bowl, I think, at this point. I don't know why you would think of it as anything else. The full actual name is the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. Like it doesn't even have like a CJ Cup presents the Byron Nelson Classic or the Byron Nelson Classic presented by this. It's just literally the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, all like one mashed up run-on sentence. So I think if we just had the Pop Tarts sponsorship and the Pop Tarts mascot, we'd be set, I think.
Yeah, PGA just doing some SEO button mashing, getting names into the into the title of the event. So what we'll talk about the top plays in our model for this event. We'll look at which players we expect to be higher owned in high stakes and high dollar GPPs on DraftKings and FanDuel based on industry projections. Still early in the week. We are recording this Tuesday afternoon, so no official trifecta plays yet, but we'll see what the betting markets are telling us this early in the week. And we'll close it out with any weather or showdown related tips for your PGA DFS contest. Just Nero, really quickly before we jump into the model, like you said, we haven't talked in a couple weeks. Any high-level thoughts that maybe people can take away from the past two events that we haven't really recapped? The RBC Heritage 2 weeks ago, that was a signature event that Justin Thomas won in that playoff. And then last week in the Zurich Classic, the team event, which I thought was kind of serendipitous that we've seen Andrew Novak and Ben Griffin in the top five seemingly of every single event so far this year, and they finally decided to pair up and actually win an event last week.
Yeah, especially Novak, who by the way lost the playoff to Justin Thomas in the aforementioned RBC Heritage, and whose tee shot on the 17th hole at the Zurich Classic looked for every dollar that I had invested in the Højgaard twins to be headed for the water. Somehow held up on the bank, and then Ben Griffin drained the putt for the go-ahead birdie there. But yeah, I mean Novak especially just like on an all-time heater this year. So good to see him get over the line. By the way, if you ever wonder how hard it is to get over the line and win your first PGA Tour event, no surprise that Novak actually had to have a partner help him to do that, given how many times he's been close this year and been unable to close the deal. So yeah, I think the Zurich remains a very tough DFS event. Less than 1% ish, 6-6 rates. Like it's really hard to get good lineups in that event because there's so much variance and the teams are so random. But I really do think it's in your best interest to play vibes for the Zurich Classic rather than math. College roommates, identical twins, perhaps with the Højgaards. Just all of that kind of stuff. McIlroy and Lowry, obviously world-class players, but still like it's, playing with your friends and your buddies and the relaxation and all the things that brings makes such a difference in that event. And yeah, the RBC Heritage, good win by Justin Thomas. Another one that might have been a little bit a long time coming. He's been playing well these last couple of months. So yeah, that was good stuff by him to win that playoff.
From the Ultimate Vibes event, now let's dive into the data for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, and we'll look at the top 10 plays in our model. Our model takes a look at which metrics historically have been important to have success at a particular course, and that's what we've done this week for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. The Occupied model is live on our site, occupyfantasy.com now. And I think the overarching theme for this week is to play Scotty Scheffler or not to play Scotty Scheffler, because he is plus 260 or so, depending on the sports book you look at, to win a full field PGA event. This is the same as he was last year in some events, and he's not in as great of form as he was last year. And he's also 13-3 on DraftKings, and Jordan Spieth is the next highest priced golfer, nearly $3,000 cheaper at 10,500. So obviously Scheffler is the number one ranked player in our model this week. What are your thoughts on his chances of winning and how we approach him in DFS?
First of all, plus 260 is insane. I was trying to think back through like peak Tiger Woods, and I'm old enough to have been at an age where I can remember peak Tiger Woods and might have actually even been gambling during peak Tiger Woods time. And I don't recall him ever being lower than like plus 300 to win an event. I'm sure he was, by the way, just for the people who can come at me in the comments. But I do not remember anything as low as plus 260. I actually appreciate the way that DraftKings has priced him this week because they've actually made you pay a price to put him in your lineup. Like if you're going to put Scotty Scheffler in your lineup, you're going to have to eat it on some of the other spots in your lineup to do so. And like that's good. It makes it a hard decision instead of a auto include decision. Yeah, I think the simplest answer is usually the best in these cases. You're going to play him in low risk contests. You're going to play him in smaller events, unless you have a small event where first prize is the only prize, and then fading him could be worthwhile. I don't know what I'm going to do yet for large field. Instinctually, my bones as a GPP player would be to say to get under the field on him in large field GPPs, but you'd have to read the plug there for my final answer because I don't quite know yet what that's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining that we'll see him at like 40% ownership in large field GPPs. Our early ownership projection has him at 38% right now. And if you're making 20 lineups, right, you could easily play him in 40%, and that's 8 out of 20, and you're totally fine there in terms of matching the field and still having enough lineups elsewhere. The problem is, Nero, though, if you only match the field and you're facing 40% of lineups in large field that are just rotating in as many possible combinations with Scheffler, and it feels like it's one of those situations where you either want to be way under and hope that Scheffler is not the answer to the test this week, or be way over and get yourself as many combinations as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I expect that I will be making a firm stance by the time I finish my lineup builds on Wednesday night, and I don't think I will just be in the field. I think the other thing to keep in mind on weeks like this is even if Scheffler top threes it, maybe not if he wins, but even if he just top fives it, like you can still beat him and you can still beat lineups with him in it as long as enough of those guys in the 9Ks, let's say, or the upper eights, low tens, get in the mix and win and or fill out the rest of the top 10, because the lineups with Scheffler will not have been able to include multiples of those players like your non-Scheffler lineups can include. So there are alternative pathways to beating Scheffler lineups, even if he plays very well. Now, if he crushes the field and it's a runaway train first place, probably not winning anything of any decent size without him in your lineup because there's going to be so many of the combinations. But anyway, by the way, that's why my instinct is always to be under him in a golf event, to be under any golfer really with like really high projected ownership in large field contests.
Exactly. Number two in our model is a surprise. And if you've been watching these videos all season long, you shouldn't be shocked that when we have a surprise in the top five of our model. But it's Carson Young, Nero, and he is 6,700 on DraftKings. So a little shocking to see someone so cheap at number two. Obviously, it's a data-driven metrics decision here to have him number two. What do you see from Carson Young?
He's a top 20, top 25 long iron player. Good off the tee on long courses, good ball striking, good scoring. For the course history folks out there, he's played here twice and he's finished 30th and 14th. Coming off two missed cuts, but before that was in okay form, not amazing, but seems to be a good stylistic fit for the course. And I think we can safely assume that the ownership on him is going to be very low. So that's what we're looking for in high risk contests.
Following Carson Young are two guys we would probably expect to see in Sungjae Kim at 10K on DraftKings, Siwoo Kim at 9,400. And again, these guys are not shocking. And it looks like, Nero, they're both pretty good in easier scoring conditions, which we haven't talked about yet, but this is one of the easier courses that guys will play on tour this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to need to probably be 25 under or better to win this event. So you're definitely going to have to go low. Both Siwoo and Sungjae are very good in those types of conditions. And Siwoo also has some very good ball striking stats, especially recently in there that I'm certain is influencing his high score in the model. You do have one subjective factor working against Sungjae for the inside baseball people, and that is that he flew to Korea last week to play in an event, promptly missed the cut, and then had to fly all the way back. Now, again, a lot of Korean players are based in Dallas because they can fly direct from Dallas to South Korea. There's a lot of flights going back and forth, which is why a lot of these guys are based here. So you could also read it the opposite way and say that, well, because he missed the cut, he got to come back a few days early and get rid of the jet lag, and so now he'll be in better shape. But yeah, either way, I think both of them are strong plays this week.
This is why we have Nero on the show and to write the plugs, because how else will we find out the South Korean travel hubs, which airports are traveling to South Korea more frequently? And Nero, how could we do that without you?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm here.
Next up in the model, he's been in the model a lot so far in the 2025 season. It's Rico Hoey, who has the ability to go low, rack up a lot of birdies, which seems like would make him a good fit at this event.
This is definitely the time of the year where we have either an alternate event or a lot of these smaller events. The courses are a little bit similar in that they tend to be wide landing areas and they're a little bit longer and they're usually birdie fests. So guys who pound it off the tee like Hoey does and who are good in birdie fests like Hoey is are going to rise their way up to the top of the model. Rico Hoey is the type of guy that you want to play on an easy course week and not the type of guy that you want to play when it's like the US Open or some other like real exacting challenge that will expose the holes in his game. This is the type of course where he can absolutely compete.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, and the model is picking up on that. The next two guys in the model for this week is looking at the distance aspect of this course, and Kurt Kitayama and Taylor Pendrith, both guys who are pretty long. And again, we're not looking to pigeonhole all of our golfers until you have to have distance this week, but it is certainly a metric that does correlate with success here.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm not wrong, I believe Pendrith is the defending champ here. Now he had a otherworldly putting week last year at this event, but still very good course fit. As they both are. I just verified he did win last year. They're both good off the tee distance, but they're also very good long iron players. And on these longer courses, you tend to have some longer approach shots into the green. So players who are good with their longer irons will usually fare pretty well in these type of tests. And by the way, if you're wondering about the scoring, he was 64, 67, 63, 67. That's what it took to win this event last year. So
yeah,
that's what you're going to need to do.
That'll play for sure. Okay, so finally closing out the top 10 of our model: Austin Eckroat, Byung-Hun An, and Johnny Vegas. So 3 different types of golfers here, different prices on DraftKings. Any ties among all 3 of these guys, or is there individual characteristics that push them up into the top 10 of our model?
Pretty good off the tee for most of them, which also then makes them, pretty good with their long irons. 3 guys though that I would love to have in easy scoring conditions. Again, when you're a little suspect with maybe your putter or with some of your real short game stuff, but on weeks where that won't get tested, but what does get tested is the thing that you do well, which is ball striking, off the tee, longer irons. All 3 of those guys fit into those categories.
So a wide variety of players at different price points to help you start your lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel this week. And as we say every week here on this show, if you're not subscribed to Occupy Fantasy, we'd love to have you. But if you don't, that's fine. If you just watch free videos every week to build your lineups, nothing wrong with that. That's why we create these videos. And if you don't subscribe to any industry projections, we try to give you as much information as possible to at least start building your lineups here. And Nero, the next part of that is we look at industry projections every single week, and we know which ones can influence high stakes decision making by PGA DFS pros. And this next segment is looking at which golfers we expect their ownership to be much higher in high dollar GPPs or in smaller GPPs where pros can play. And our advice to those of you who are watching and don't have access to any other projections or are not a subscriber at occupyfantasy.com is to just play these guys if you're playing in 25-cent $1 contests, because they're pretty good plays. But if you're playing in higher dollar GPPs, be aware that these guys' ownership may be elevated. So who are we looking at on DraftKings and FanDuel this week, Nero, that no matter what projected ownership says, they're going to come in higher in those types of contests?
Yeah, let's just go individually. We have some crossover, but maybe not as much as we've had in other weeks. So on DraftKings, Scotty Scheffler, Jacob Bridgman, Taylor Moore, Doug Gim, Hendrik Norlander, and Max McGreevy. By the way, if you're curious about the strength of this field, and I just read off those names that are going to get bumps in the high stakes contests, that should be a very good indication to you of how weak this field is, because normally the names that we read off in this section are almost all recognizable or like really top tier players. That is absolutely not the case this week. And then on FanDuel, we've got some similar and some new. So no surprise, Scheffler. And again, on FanDuel, usually easier to get those guys at the very high end of the salary ranges into your lineups, because you just don't have to pay as much of a tax to do so. Taylor Moore, Rio. Now I have gone, after I did the pronunciation 2 weeks ago, I have now figured out how you say his name, or at least how you're supposed to say it phonetically. So it's Hisasune, where I was saying, I believe Hisatune or something, but whatever, that's wrong. So then Norlander, McGreevy again, and Grayson Sig. So that's our FanDuel list compared to our DraftKings list.
Cool. And so a little bit of an overlap there. Is there any common thread among these guys that you're seeing, or is it a good mix of player profiles that the industry projections are pushing into the high stakes GPPs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you've got a little mix of some fairly good recent ball striking stuff with some positive course history for a few of these guys, and that's it. You might have one or two. And what you see a lot in these lists are just guys who are mispriced relative to their odds to win, generally speaking, in the market, and you definitely have that for a few of these guys that are on both sets of lists.
And again, if you have access to our Occupy model, we have the odds in the model as well, and you can perform that exercise yourself, where you just sort by salary, DraftKings or FanDuel, and then you compare the odds. And you can kind of see which golfers stick out, and you can expect them to be higher owned in some higher stakes contests. But it's a good way to tell you how someone is mispriced. We get that question often: how is a golfer mispriced? Normally, that is the way that most people will look at that. Now, speaking of betting odds, let's go back to DraftKings here. And we don't have any official trifecta plays yet, where we monitor the sharper sports books all week and see which golfers' odds to win have improved at all the books. We're guaranteed to have a great list by Wednesday evening. But Nero, no one's on the list officially just yet. There's only one golfer that we've tracked that has moved at multiple sports books. And it's a little too surprising to me, so I'm curious to get your take. It's Eric Cole.
Yeah. A little surprising, I would agree. But he is in the top 5 to 10 when I look at easy scoring condition courses. So, and he is absolutely someone who can get hot with his irons and with his putter, and that's absolutely what you want. Eric Cole, like a subjective thing in his favor. So if you follow golf, you might know the story a little bit. Like, just the ultimate grinder, even last year, was still going to play mini tour events on the weeks off from the PGA Tour. But the reason why it matters this week is in those mini tour events or in the Monday qualifiers and all this stuff that he played in for years and years and years, you either go really low or you go home.
True.
So you get practiced about, like, once you get 3 under through 6, you're like, you don't just start playing conservative. You actually play more aggressive, and you try to get to 6 under, to 8 under, to 9 under, like that. Like, he's very conditioned through all of his other, I mean, obviously on some level, all of these guys are, but someone like Cole, who spent so much time in the minor leagues and who still goes back and plays those events on occasion, is very conditioned to, like, going low at all costs. And it's no surprise to see him ranks so highly in those easy course scoring metrics.
That's an incredible angle that I've never thought of. So that's a really good way to look at that, Nero. Thank you for that. And also, I didn't realize he has 4 straight top 26 finishes. He hasn't been making my player pool very often this year, so it was a little bit surprising to me to go back and look now and see that he's actually been playing pretty well.
Has been. He tends to be, he's pretty quiet just anyway. Like, he doesn't have like a big personality, and he's a grinder on top of it. So you don't really notice it, but he tends to be slow and steady, which is why it was so weird, like back in February and March when he was missing all those
Yeah.
cuts in a row. And he did miss the cut last week, but that was at the Zurich, so I think you kind of just have to toss that stuff out. But yeah, last 4 finishes all in the top 26. So it's pretty good stuff from him lately.
Interesting. All right, let's close out the show with any showdown or weather-related notes. And Nero, it was a little tough on Tuesday here to look at the weather and see if anything may play out. Are you seeing anything in the forecast down in McKinney, Texas, that can maybe impact whether it's our classic lineups or our round 1 through round 4 showdown lineups?
Yeah, I mean the breeze is going to be up, especially Friday through Sunday, and looks like we're going to get some pretty significant rain Wednesday afternoon, overnight Wednesday, and then also once again on Friday morning. So, if that comes to pass, we're going to have a long, soft golf course, will play even more into the hands of the distance guys and the better ball strikers, because they'll be able to fly the ball all the way to the pin and have it stick. So, I think I would, if the forecast holds, I would continue to really target those top off the tee players, those top ball strikers, because they will be throwing darts all week long.
Yep, and we always talk about wind on this show, but let's not forget about rain as well and the impact that may have. And if it does soften the course up in the middle of a round, those guys who play after could play in softer, easier scoring conditions, even easier than typical here at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. So just something to keep in mind. Thank you for that, Nero. All right, guys, that'll do it for this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. It's free to do so. Get you notified whenever we post any videos. Generally, we will do these videos every week. Schedules didn't align last week, plus with the team pair nature of that event, we didn't post a video, but basically every other event we will have a video for PGA DFS, so make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. Other way to support the channel that's free and quick to do so is give us a thumbs up. You can also comment. That is another easy, surprising way to help the channel, and you get some questions answered. So any questions you have about the event, about your lineups, about specific players, drop a comment below here on the video. The Daily Plug, which Nero will post his top plays and his lineup strategies and course breakdowns, that'll be posted Tuesday nights or Wednesday morning for this event, as it is every week. Occupy model is already up and running, ranking every single golfer on DraftKings and FanDuel, and our lineup builder is already ready to go, so you can build up to 300 lineups using our Occupy model values and optimal lineup criteria for PGA DFS. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thanks to everyone for listening. We appreciate you as always. Good luck and enjoy this college football bowl game, CJ Cup, Byron Nelson, down in Texas.